welcome to another episode of the Being and Doing podcast. And today with me is Isaiah Rodrigues or Quinn, and we will talk more into this. And we're talking on a relation Brooklyn-London, which is the first time I'm doing this.
Hey.
Hi, Isaiah. And I'm
Hey.
so very happy to have him here. And I want to share with you to start with the reason I thought that he would be an interesting person to talk to. And as usual, I tell you a quite detailed story of how I met someone and how all of this came to be. And I have seen his Instagram page a while ago, and it was very catchy with his presentation because he has this small typewriter printed notes. And I remember something that really resonated with me, and then I sent him a message, and then somehow, like, he was very gentle in the response, which I've never experienced before. And then just 2 days ago, I saw this short poem, which is called Dear Hands, and I will read it to you. It says, "Don't let them tell you art is a hopeless pursuit. Art, my friends, is pursuing light for the hopeless." And I found this to be really the most beautiful description of art I have heard in recent times. So thank you for this.
Thank you.
And with this, I would really like to start exploring who this person really is, because like you, I don't really know much about Isaiah. So do you want me to call you Isaiah, Z, Quinn?
You can just call me Z for the
Z.
interview. That'd be cool. Yeah, simple, short, sweet.
Awesome. So welcome. My first question to you would be, basically, tell us, we know now you are the poet on Instagram, but who are you in real life, and what are your aspirations?
Yeah, so I am 25 years old now. I actually turned 25 recently. It's just the beginning of November, November 6th. I am a friend, a brother, a son to two wonderful parents, and they live in Washington. I'm Washington born and raised. I barely moved to Brooklyn a few months ago, I believe. Yeah, so, and in terms of who I am, I would just say, I know you said like I'm the poet, but I kind of view myself in that light. I mean, everything that I do is kind of a reflection of like who I want to be and who I see myself as, and that would be like the writer, the poet, the stuff that I do. So that's kind of who I am in a nutshell, I suppose.
And I'm curious, when was it that the idea of a writer formed in you? And was that something you are trained for, or it's something that is stemming from a hobby?
Yeah, so that one goes way back actually. So I grew up in a private school that was predominantly Dutch and German, and I was actually the only Hispanic kid at the private school. So it writing for me is where I found my identity, because at a young age I really gravitated towards books and characters and stories and stuff like that. And not that I didn't feel like I didn't fit in where I was at, besides like the obvious contrast, like the color of the skin, like I said, because it was a completely Dutch German school. But I just felt more at home, like inside the books and stuff like that. So I started to live my identity out that way. So yeah, at a young age, I guess is when it kind of started, where I started to identify myself as like, hey, this is where I find my comfort. This is kind of where I express myself, and I feel like identity is expression. That's who we are to the outside world. So that's where I kind of took that on, I guess.
And I'm curious, did you go so the poet and the writer is something you do professionally, or did you study to do something else, or do you do something else for living and this is your expression? So how does that?
Yeah, I'd gone to school for like communications, and like naturally there was this this desire inside of me to be like more creative, you know, and I feel like it's inside all of us for sure.
Mm-hmm.
Um, yeah, so like I went to school for communications, did that, didn't really do anything with it. Um, and it wasn't until about 3 or 4 years ago when I decided like, hey, I believe in myself enough as a writer, create like, and my creativity to like to do this as my profession. So
Mm-hmm.
like I started working on my first book and that came into fruition and that was really cool. And I just put out my second book and I'm working on a third one right now and the process is becoming easier. So like in my eyes, what I want to do is, you know, be an author. So that would be my full-time thing.
There are many things I want to explore, so I will try to go step by step. One thing is
Right.
that that you like books and that was your world growing up. So could you talk more to that, and could you talk what kind of voices were influencing you in terms of stories and the books you read and authors and all these kind of things?
I've thought about like because a lot of people ask me, you know, like you know where do you get your inspiration from, or like how you said like the voices and stuff. At my school, every year we would do uh, a fine arts day for the parents. Excuse me. And we'd have to either like perform a skit or sing a song or recite a poem. And I think like when you're a kid and you're forced to do something, it's not as fun. But I realized that it instilled something inside me that was like a little seed that was like starting to grow, you know, that, oh, I actually do like to do this, you know, and I like the way how the words sound, you know, when I'm performing for people and stuff like that. So I would definitely contribute the start of it to those days. And then also a specific book in particular, it's called The Phantom Tollbooth by Norton Jester. It's like it's a young adult book. It's a kid's book. But I think just the play on words, the way that the way that he would play with words to me as young kids really fascinates me. And I kind of fell in love with like the English language and how you can manipulate it and use it in a way to get across something that like might not be the face value of
Mm-hmm.
what you're reading, you know. And so yeah, I think that book was really important in finding my voice and falling in love with writing and and yeah, and becoming who I am today.
So funny, for me, I had many phases during my high school years, and I actually had a phase where it was very difficult. I was a little bit rejected from my peers, and I really found solace in books. And
Mm,
I remember incessantly reading. And actually, I had a very good literature teacher in high school. So for me, words became so important, almost as
right.
if like the beauty of words can break us and make us at the same time.
Mm,
And I remember actually like because the some like words like beautiful usage of words can actually evoke such a strong emotion that um, I feel like it's almost a responsibility to know how to use them well. So I'm just wondering, like, uh, how did you fall in that, in like you spoke a little bit about this from reading that particular book, but how was this love towards language and towards words like growing, and who was then influencing it in different ways in that process? Was there someone, not only a writer but also someone in your environment who you appreciate for the use of words?
um, I wouldn't say a particular person in my inner circle. I'd say artists in different mediums though.
Mm-hmm.
So like first it was like a novelist, like I said, with Norton Juster. Then when I reached high school, I remember my best friend had showed me a video of like slam poetry, and the effect that it had was big on me because I got to see how someone could really like convey their emotions in a way that's just like just in your face and super, aggressive in a sense, just really out there for everyone to feel. And music has always been another way that's like shaped that love for communicating with people. I'm just really big on like lyrics and stuff like that,
Mm-hmm.
um, language in general. So the way that it came across or communicated to me changed as I got older, but it was always still at the root like the love for words and stuff like that.
And I'm also curious, so you said that the process is becoming easier now with your that you're working on your third book. Can you
Mhm.
actually talk about the process? So how do you actually find the expression? Not necessarily find the inspiration, but really, if you say, do you decide to write a book? Is it a project, or is it just a collection of small pieces? So
Mhm.
can you talk to this?
Yeah. I guess I probably couldn't speak for every writer because I feel like it's different for everyone.
Yeah,
But in my
exactly.
experience,
But
yeah, right. In my experience, at least, I don't want to say something people are like, oh, that's completely wrong. But in my experience, at least, it's been I've okay. So like, just to lay some foundation, I feel it's hard to write about what you're going through at the moment because it's so close to your nose. Like it's so, that sometimes you need some time to really step back and analyze and realize what happened in your life or whatever it is that you're trying to write about. So I don't try to force anything or I don't sit down and like, I'm going to write this. I think as I go through life and I start to unpack things that are just inside um, from life experiences, I start to build up like a collection of work. And then what has happened or what my experience has been is I'll go over like the time lapse and I'll look at the work and I'll see if there's any common elements. And I'll say, okay, I was going through this and this and this, and I can structure a book around that. And then what I'll do is I'll take the pieces that I feel stand out the most and then build around them. So like it's kind of like with a song, how there's a chorus and you have your verse. And the chorus is kind of just the recurring main message or whatever. And so I build around those stronger pieces, um, fueled off that energy from when it impacted me in that moment. So that's the way I've like gone with writing my books. I'll just let some time pass, not try to force anything, um, go through it, look for common elements, be like, okay, I realize this is what I was going through, and I feel like I can help people understand this emotion more because I went through it, and then I go from there. So that's how my experience has been.
And I'm curious in if going into nitty-gritty details, because there is some element of productivity in being able to produce enough work if you want it. Although I
Right.
don't think what you are doing is work for you.
Mm.
Um, so do you have a stable routine of just capturing your experiences? Or how does that look like for you?
Yeah. I could definitely be more disciplined with it when it comes to like sitting down and telling myself, okay, like you're gonna write. But I've noticed that when I try to do that, the stuff that comes out's a little bit more like technical writing
Mm-hmm.
or stuff that's not really as pleasuring to me. It's more like, okay, this kind of just me hacking out my thoughts or um, stuff that's not as raw, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
Um, the pieces like for the poetry that I write it kind of just falls out of my head, and when it does, no matter where I'm at, like I'll give it the attention, whether it's like if I'm writing, I have to grab my pen and write in my journal or phone and quick type into my notes, or if I'm lucky enough to be at home, I'll set up my typewriter and kind of clunk it out. But it's funny because like my friends know when those moments hit me because I'll just completely zone out. And I was like, yeah, yeah, yeah. You know, they'll be talking, and it's not in a form of disrespect. I think they just know that like something came to my head and I need to get it out. So um, there's not really a process to those things. I feel like they just hit me and they just fall right out of the air. So yeah.
I mean, it's almost like lucid, like you, that's what I
Mm,
like. So, I mean, the way I'm thinking about my work as well is it's creative to some extent, and then to some extent you need to have the productive side. But
right,
also for us, for example, which experiment I'm going to do is a decision I have to make. But sometimes if I force myself to constantly think which experiments have to be done, then I don't necessarily choose the best ones. But then
right,
after I let some time pass, and like I also kind of zoom out, as you said, like that is not anymore in front of my nose, then it suddenly clicks. So I actually do like that fluidity, and it's really interesting that you nurture it. And
right.
I feel like many people actually have kind of difficulty to nurture it. So
Mm.
I wanted to ask you, did you experience that in the beginning and then it became easier, or it was just always there for you and you were never really like conscious that you're doing it in such a fluid way?
I think at first, so I've gotten better with it. At first, I feel like it was more laziness than anything. I was just telling myself like, oh, well, inspiration will just hit me, and when it happens, it happens, you know. As I've gotten better at honing into the craft, I've noticed that yes, it's that, but it's also setting myself up in an environment where those moments will come out more naturally. So like setting myself away from distractions, or being in a more creative area, whether it's like visually something stimulating, you know, going to look at art, or being around the sounds of other life. Like I like to go to the park just to like listen and observe, and stuff will just fall out naturally. But those things wouldn't happen if I didn't set myself in the right spot for those things to happen. So if you're one of those people, if you're a writer listening, and you know you're saying, oh well, I don't want to say, oh, I'm gonna sit down and write right now because stuff's gonna come to me. Like yes, but also set yourself in the position to succeed. So I guess when it comes to like structure, going back a little bit, um, at least be structured enough to allow your creative mind to breathe,
Mm-hmm.
um, and and you'll get better at your mind will get better at knowing, hey, I'm in a spot where I can just release, and these ideas will just start to fall out. So
So, to speaking to that part, actually, I'm curious because I do yoga, and
mm,
well, actually, I also teach it, and I also like to understand for myself how do we create this space of where when the mind is really, really in a space of calmness and release.
uh,
And for me, what happens, like by doing yoga, I actually understood almost that. I'm constantly thinking. And especially because my job is to think, I'm almost like a
right.
compulsive thinker. And so
Mm,
at the end of a yoga practice, I sometimes feel like that I was thinking so much that actually like my muscles are really tense here. I don't know if
mm,
you ever saw the statue of Rodin, like the thinker that like it's
right, right.
so there is a certain physical posture that we take
Yes,
when we are actively and forcefully thinking. But then there is this other part of thinking which is really like releasing the mind in order to process all the stimuli, and
right.
then is when those ideas kind of, we say, hit you, but they don't really hit you. It's just the mind, almost like this kind of, I imagine it is like, is the mind is like racing, 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 and it's like, it's just like you never allowed it to completely unwind.
Yeah.
So I was just curious. So I was curious, like, because this is also about the quality of life. We need to allow, or we don't need to, but it will maybe enrich our lives if we allow ourselves to get to that space.
Hmm.
And also, especially in today's world where we are constantly stimulated, it's very
Right.
difficult to get to those spaces. So, not only for poets, I just want to ask you also for anyone who is dealing with with this kind of maybe discomfort or like inability to tap into the creative mind, how what are those strategies that you have set up? You mentioned some, but maybe you can really talk about the clear experience, or maybe do you feel that shift sometimes
Mhm.
of the unwinded mind?
I'd like to go back to actually what you were talking about of being like constantly stimulated. I feel like we live in a really like noisy and distracted world, and I feel like the 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 relaxation part of it is being selective with what you're being stimulated by,
Mm-hmm.
and choosing the things that know bring you peace to be stimulated by those things, you know.
Mm-hmm.
And it's hard. It's obviously like really hard sometimes because I know a lot of people are always on their phones, or like everywhere you go, there's some type of chaos going on, you know. But if you can, if you have the ability to, like you said, like you do yoga, you know, being intentional with your time and allowing it to stimulate yourself in ways that you choose, I feel like brings that relaxation and that peace and that calmness of being like, okay, I'm more focused, I'm more clear, I'm more, you know, stuff like that. And that's something that I do because I know like on my best days, because you can feel when you had a good day or like a bad day, you know,
Mm-hmm.
in whatever the sense might be. But it's been when like I've set up myself to be like, okay, I'm gonna go to the gym, I'm gonna do this because I like to do that. I'm gonna walk on the treadmill, I'm gonna make sure I eat something good today, or you know, setting myself up with certain types of stimulus that like really enrich my life, I guess. Um, Helps that process of like unwinding and feeling like I'm so caught up in, oh, look here, look at this, or you know.
Almost
um
almost switching from a reactive state into an expressive one, kind of.
yeah, so I feel like at least for me, those are when I have the best days, when I can somewhat ensure that what I'm going to be interacting with is something that's healthy to my DNA, things that I
Mhm.
enjoy, things that fuel me, things that, you know, things that I like to do. So
And can
yeah.
you talk really in the nitty grittiest details what that is? Because, you know, sometimes we don't really know what that is. So maybe some people can actually relate. So you
hmm
mentioned gym, but are there like some other things specifically that really put you into that space? So like you can mention some so that we, you know, we can also paint a picture of what you like and who you are in that way as well.
yeah. um so besides like lifting, I would say the most release that I get is from like just being on the treadmill and kind of like just like walking uphill to like some classical music. It really just like, I feel like a well-oiled machine there. And it's funny because I wish I could see people like seeing me when I'm on there, because I'm totally zoned out. I'm on my phone, like notes are just falling out, and I'm just like walking on the treadmill listening to this music. And I think it's a funny sight because I feel like the emotion on my face and in my body. And sometimes I feel like, oh man, what do I look like right now? I probably look ridiculous. But so that's one thing that I like to do. Other things, I'd say I'm stimulated by like a lot of visuals, so enjoying just movies. I feel like that helps bring me some type of grounding, some type of inner peace. Um,
And
which is
what
funny
kind of
too.
movies?
What was that?
What kind of movies?
Anything really. Mostly dramas, something that's really gonna like pull at the heart.
Mm-hmm.
Comedy, nothing too raunchy. I like good humor that's gonna, you know, make me think, make me laugh. Um, because I feel like it speaks to my character. I feel like drama and comedy are two things that speak to my character, and so like I feel like it just like really compliments me and it makes me feel at home.
And what are the
Um,
movies that you watch repeatedly, for example?
yeah. So the my favorite like all-time movie, it's called The Eternal Sunshine of the Spotless Mind
Yeah.
with Jim Carrey. And I think it was like the first movie I watched because I love Jim Carrey. Like growing up, he was like the man, right, for a lot of people. But a lot of the movies I had watched were just like, you know, all of his funny stuff. And so like that was the first movie I had seen him do like a serious role.
Mm-hmm.
And again, going back to lyrics, the reason why I love that movie so much, it's like at the very end when everything's falling apart and they're having that dialogue, and she says, this is it. Like, what do we do now? He just says like, enjoy it. And I remember like just those two words just hit me so hard in the chest when I first watched it. And I was like, yep, this is my favorite movie now. Just because the writing, the writing was good. So that one I'll watch a lot. Goodwill Hunting, I'll watch a
Oh,
lot.
I love Goodwill Hunting.
So
So
good.
the reason I love Goodwill Hunting is I was applying for my PhD and
Hmm.
I watched it on that time, and I was thinking about at the end what is really important, because I was applying to a big school, and then there is this sentence of like, um, you can find in a library things that you pay 20,000 grand
Mm,
to study for. And
right.
like just this sentence, that actually knowledge is available,
Hmm.
and that it's really up to us to really absorb it and play with it, and just there is no excuse almost, was
Hmm.
was a really like strong hit, especially at the time when I was applying for something that's like, it's the same thing that is happening in the movie kind of,
Right.
and
Well,
it
I
brings
have a
you back
question.
to humbleness. Yes, yep, I'm listening.
Oh, sorry, I didn't want to interrupt. Was it almost like deflating for you in a sense to be like, oh man, I'm gonna go on this huge, quest for give up so many years of my life, and when that line hit you the way it did it feel a certain type of way for you?
It felt like actually like a bit liberating, because it felt rather like, no matter what happens, I can always learn.
Mm,
And this was really, yeah, the feeling was more liberation rather than deflation kind of,
okay.
because it just felt like there is always access. And sometimes I realized that we kind of have this mental barbed wires almost that stops us from actually accessing all of that, just because we
Hmm.
always feel like someone needs to grant us permission, but there's no one, like it's only
Right.
us. It's just this on our own blockage. So yeah, it rather felt liberating actually. Yeah.
Huh. I'm glad that it was that for you. I feel like, I don't know, for a lot of people, like at least when they're in those younger ages, there's a lot of questions and like doubts, or am I doing the right thing, or
Mm.
am I doing this because I want to, because my parents, or like stuff like that. So like I feel like if some person were to have that moment where they're like, wow, they had that epiphany of just like, yeah, knowledge can be there and I can work on it here or work on it there, like I don't know. There's a lot there, but I wanted to know how you felt about that. And I'm glad it was more liberating than deflating.
But what kind of impact did or does the movie have on you? So what is it that in the movie really resonates with you?
Um, I think mostly on what you talked about, just whew, okay, we might get deep for a second.
I
I
actually
think
like
just like,
deep, so yeah, go for it.
yeah, I think it's just like with my upbringing, the community that I come from, and seeing like the struggles inside the community, um, and feeling that like a lot of the people in that community are those underdog people,
Mm-hmm.
chip on the shoulder, maybe just like counted out, or already have their like life written for them in a sense, to go through the motions and kind of live this average life, if you will. Um, to see him, with this gift, right? This like this photographic memory, and but to be a part of that crowd and do these things, it really gives you a hero
Mm-hmm.
to believe in, and also project yourself onto. And it's like you don't need that photographic memory. You just need like the will and the hunger to, how we are talking about, like the knowledge is there, to want better for your life, and do with it whatever you will, but um I think it's just like having the understanding of seeing the community that he was raised in on the east side, and knowing the community that I come from, and just wanting more for not only myself, but like for the people that I grew up with, I guess. So.
So I would like to talk more to that feeling because I had it while growing up, and actually I had an interview with a friend where he grew up in East London, which was also
Mm-hmm.
a very difficult suburb. And we really discussed this thing that when you grow up in scarcity and in
Mm-hmm.
this feeling of like in this feeling of I need to fight for abundance
Mm-hmm.
somehow. And actually, you never even perceive abundance as a possibility.
Right.
And almost because they completely externalize abundance from you.
Mm-hmm.
And this is always very funny for me because it took me really a long time. As I told you, I come from Serbia, and I don't
Right.
want to sound arrogant because I grew up in a really nice family with a father that is a doctor and mother that's an economist. So, I grew up in a very, very nice surrounding, but that doesn't take away the fact that it was inflation, so there was not
Mm-hmm.
much money, and that there was bombing and there was a war and all these kind of things. And in
Mm-hmm.
general, like just I feel like our culture is very, very sad and depressed. So almost our collective story is very sad and depressed.
Mm-hmm.
So, and I think that happens in a lot of these kind of communities.
Right.
The story perpetuated is constantly you can't make it, you
Mm-hmm.
can't, almost like what we talked with this friend of mine is almost like you shouldn't have dreams
Right.
because they almost like they never come true. So
Mm-hmm.
I was just wondering, like, you grew up there but you obviously allowed yourself to get to that creative space. What is it that you uh, kind of access to get you to that space? And what
Mm-hmm.
would you say to the members of the community if they would, for example, listen to you now? What would you tell them to allow them to dream? Regardless, like how difficult their state is, that it's really difficult to get on the other side of the sun.
Mm-hmm.
But what would you tell them, you know, are the resources that are available that can get them there or that got you there?
Oof. There's a lot of questions there, but let's
Yeah.
just unpack it. I think like the first part of that was my reason behind it, right? And the second part was
Yeah,
um
the not reason, but rather like what are the resources that you accessed in order to uh, liberate yourself from this internal kind of block of abundance, if you ever had it. And
mhm.
then what would you tell them how to create it if they don't have it somehow?
Honestly, I feel like in at least in my story, it's been a person like whether it's like a mentor or someone that like I just look up to or someone with just like a real genuine heart. I feel like there's enough genuine hearts in the world for you to access to like connect with, and whether they're trying to push you in the direction of your dreams or just trying to like love on you. I feel like the root of overcoming just that despair and that blockage is just like understanding that there's stuff to give, like there's love to give, and I feel like that at least that's like what like fuels me. I feel like, and geez, where's my head at right now? Could you re-ask the
Okay.
questions? I could,
Yes.
yeah.
So you said you had a mentor that was somehow your resource. So
Hmm.
what did that mentor, so he or she gave you some love as the resource, the feeling
Yeah.
of love. And you say you accessed this, and you can access people who are willing to give as
Right.
well. So actually, I want to just add something before I continue with the question. I think what we always forget, because we only maybe sometimes ask once, and if one person doesn't give us back, we
Hmm.
immediately stop. But from
Right.
my experience, what I would want to say is that actually if we constantly ask, because we are deprived, and it's okay to be deprived because we just grow up in these situations, there will be someone who sees us in our needs. So what
Right.
I would say to my community is just never stop asking, because it is okay not to be okay, kind of.
No, yeah.
But my question to you now rather is, so what would you say to your community, and for the people that might have been feeling trapped for a long time, and they really think there is more to life than this, but they don't think they are allowed to have that?
Right. The biggest thing in my community, at least, kind of piggybacking off what you said of like it's okay to continuously ask, would just be like pride.
Uh-huh.
I feel like pride hinders a lot of stuff, and um, as much as I don't buy into this part of the culture, especially in like the Latin community, like the masculine energy inside the
Mm-hmm.
community is really like, no, like I'm just gonna figure it out. I'm gonna white knuckle it. I'm gonna figure it out by myself, and and there's so much hurt that goes on in that process. Just like, no,
Mm-hmm.
like, hey man, it's okay to ask for help, or like it's okay to, how you said, to not be okay. So I feel like the biggest thing was just like, hey, like put your pride aside and ask until a door is open, because eventually like a door will open,
Mm-hmm.
whether that's someone that wants to help you financially or someone wants to help you emotionally, mentally. Like there's always a hole in someone that needs to be filled,
Mm-hmm.
or at least like given the tools for them to fill it themselves.
Mm-hmm.
And I feel like putting that aside and just being like, hey, I need direction, or I need just light shed in this area so I can learn about these things that I'm interested in. Like I had, like when I first started writing, I had to read out to people like, hey, like how do you put a book together? How do you do this? How do you do that? But like if I was just like super prideful and was like, no, I'm just gonna figure it out, I probably wouldn't have came to pass. So I feel like just putting your pride aside and understanding that everyone starts somewhere, everyone's got to figure it out, and just like keep on asking until someone does, like those things will happen and the dominoes will start to fall. So yeah, I feel like that would be like the biggest thing, just like put the pride aside. Don't let it block your blessings, I guess.
Yeah. And actually, I want to explore when until wherever you are, we are willing to talk about it. So you talk about your community. Can you talk more to it? What did that community look like, and how did your upbringing look like? And then also eventually we will talk about your mentor and what that brought to you, actually.
Okay. So my upbringing, it's just like a small working class town, a lot of agriculture, um, and it's as progressive as I find myself. It's really conservative, like
Mm-hmm.
the place that I grew up in. Um, really rooted in tradition. Um, it's kind of like a place stuck in time, really.
Mm-hmm.
um,
And where
and
is
so
that?
that so it's a small town in Washington called Sunnyside.
Mm-hmm.
Um, yeah. So,
And at this
oh, sorry, what?
moment, you are surrounded mostly by people who are kind of the similar cultural background to you, or not.
Yeah, the place is majority Hispanic, and then I'd say um, the rest is just like Caucasian. Like I said, it's a lot of like agriculture, so it's
Mm-hmm.
weird the way that it operates, because a lot of the reasons why the Hispanic families are there is just like to work in like dairy farms, or like orchards or vineyards and stuff like that. And it's kind of like just it goes back many years, and that's just the way it's been. Um, and no one's really like left, I guess. So they've just been there like that, existing in this kind of cycle of, these are the people that have kind of owned you know, the farms and the vineyards, and these are the people that work for them. And that's the way it plays out. But yeah, upbringing, I'd say besides like super like conservative, my household was religious as well. My
Mm-hmm.
mom's super really
Virgin
into church.
Guadalupe kind of thing.
Um, she's actually um, she's actually Christian.
Oh, okay. Mm-hmm.
So, and it's she finds her identity inside of the church, so it's really extreme.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I feel like those two things though really helped me find myself because the contrast was just like so real, you know.
Mm-hmm.
I realized I was like, whoa, like this isn't me at all, and it pushed me into like who I am, you know.
I mean, that's a
Um,
very funny thing I mean, just to share, because we grew up in completely different sides of the world, but my
mm,
grandma was extremely, um, I wouldn't say religious. I would just say maybe superstitious in her religion.
mm,
And it was an orthodox upbringing, kind of. So
mm-hmm,
not in this sense that I was pushed to go to church, but I have been instilled all the fears that the church instills in you, like if
right,
you're not good, you go to hell, or if you're not like this.
mm-hmm,
So almost like as if you internally build like a watcher that just constantly blocks you somehow.
mm-hmm,
And the funny thing is, like, I did when I was small, because there was in our community this idea that, like, on the 1st of August there was some saint day where there's always storms, and
mm-hmm,
if you go for a swim, you will die because that person doesn't like water. So I was
huh,
small and there was an intense fear, and I was like doing experiments. Like one
mm-hmm.
year I would like maybe like have a shower, and then the next year maybe I go to the swimming pool, and then like, and then you realize, well, nothing is happening to me. I mean, it's a bad thing because statistically something can actually happen and
Right,
might
right,
prove you wrong, but luckily it didn't, so it kind of pulled me out of the fear.
mm,
uh, but I can relate to you, although yeah, we have been brought up in completely different parts of the
yeah.
world, but
A, a younger you was waging a war with the gods, I see.
exactly, 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 exactly.
That's funny. I like that. Just the idea of you like I like when you said that the first thing I thought it was like a younger you just like dipping your toe in the bathtub on
Yeah,
the
yeah,
day, you know, just like walking away, like what happened, you know? That's funny. That's funny.
yeah, yeah, exactly.
No, but yeah, I similar upbringings like that, and it's weird how you were saying just like when you grow up in traditions that are so ancient, you know, like the church
Mhm.
has been around for a long time. The teachings and how truthful people think it is, the way that they throw it on you, like it sticks to you no
Yes.
matter like how much you don't want it to, you know? Because I find myself sometimes feeling how you're feeling, like, oh, is this right or wrong? You know, or like when in my moral compass, it's like, no, yeah, you're fine. But what I've been taught and taught and taught and taught and taught, it's like so instilled in you that's just like, oh, get out of my head, you know?
Yeah, I mean, like the fear is real. Like it's there. Like your
hmm
thoughts, like you might rationalize it, but like you are so conditioned almost
hmm
that there's nothing you can do to escape until your body
hmm
finally has had so many times to show to itself that it's not true. That
Right.
finally kind of goes like
I feel that, yeah.
yeah. So we can pick it up from there. So there was this church part of the religion being inside your house. So are there other things that are part of that are bringing that kind of shape you in the way? So there was, and then also, how did you, when you felt that this is not you, how did you move away from it, and how long did that take?
I think there was first like some initial friction, just because like obviously when you're younger, you know, you follow the rules of the house, you know, your
Mhm.
parents, you know, they're taking care of you. And that's just how I was taught. So like there was friction at first because like I still like remember the first day I told my mom like no, like I don't want to go to church today, you know, like because I like how you said you were dragged along and stuff like that, you know. And that was like a big moment in my life. Like that was a stepping stone to realizing like, hey, like I might be spiritual, but I might not agree with what the church is teaching me, you know. I think I was like 16 or 17 at the time, and so that was a pivotal moment for me. Um,
And was there just a feeling inside, or was this already the time where you actually had access to information and then you started to also rationally question it?
Yeah, I was taking a world's religions class at the time, at my school. So,
Okay.
um, it's probably it it probably was the big push behind it. But I think just trying to like rationalize myself, like, hey, there's so much more outside this routine that we're stuck in. Like, who's to say this isn't right or this isn't right, or um, and just like a general like hunger for truth, I guess,
Hmm.
and not just what I've been like brought into. Because I had, like when you're younger, you have no say into what
Hmm.
activities you're participating, because you kind of just like you're coming with me,
Yeah.
whatever it is, grocery shopping, this, that. Um, but when you come to that part when you can start like making decisions for yourself, I think that's when I started to like really like question and try to figure out like what my truth is and stuff. So yeah.
That's, I really find it funny because you said hunger for knowledge, and I call that in myself always curiosity. So if someone would ask me what brought me where I am and what the secret of my success is basically like curiosity, like
Curiosity.
yeah, wanting to really understand what the reality actually is,
Hmm.
but unbiasedly, like almost as if like I don't want it to be something. I just want
Right.
to reveal itself back to me.
Mm.
So I guess that's why I'm doing the job I'm doing. But for you, you are actually creating reality. So can you talk to that? Because you started also by having this hunger for knowledge, but then
Mm.
like now you're distilling that knowledge into words. And so how does like do you have a growth process which also kind of helps your poetry to grow or mature?
I have a growth process. I think just I think as oh, this is what I noticed. It's funny because like these questions you're asking me are like self-realizations that I've had like not even too long ago, like weeks.
Okay.
um, in terms of like just the growth, I feel like it just comes like with the maturity of the person.
Hmm.
Um, like you can always get better like technically with any craft, but I think just like the level of understanding and the level of depth and like the more moments you go through that, a little bit more real. Like when you're younger, like say when I'm 17, like my first heartbreak. Obviously, like I was devastated,
Mm-hmm.
but you grow up and you realize like, hey, like maybe I don't know what real loss is because it wasn't as important. So I feel like as you get older, in my older age, like I've noticed that there's been moments that are just a little bit more real, just like, yo, this is some adult stuff or whatever that means, but um and because of that reason I can analyze it in a more adult way, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
And so like the growth just comes from the maturity of the person, I believe.
Yeah.
And that's something that I have been able to track. I was like, okay, well, that writing was good, but for only 18-year-old me or 20-year-old me, or and also just the media and stuff that I take in, digest. The more I explore different veins of stuff that aren't just like childish, I guess, the
Mm-hmm.
more it opens up the more it opens up the language for me to feel like growth there. Um,
And
so yeah, like
when you look at your previous words, sorry, I interrupted your train of thought.
no, you're fine. Go for it.
Um, uh, when you look at the old you and the old writing, do you have this acceptance of, oh, look at the small me, this is so beautiful, or do you actually have a cringe? Because I feel like until the moment we lose that cringe, we don't
Hmm.
fully accept ourselves. So I'm just
Right.
really curious whether you are or at that stage or not yet.
It's I feel like I battle with it. I go back and forth, and like how I said, like sometimes I realize like, yo, this is the best that I could do at the time, and so I shouldn't be hard on myself. But I feel like we're always so critical of, or at least there's a group of people that are just critical on
Yes,
themselves
yes.
naturally, and so I'll look back and I'll just be like, oh, especially when people find the earlier work first, and maybe not my newer stuff. and they're like, oh, this is, this is good. I'm like, no, 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 no.
No,
Look
you
at
don't
this, look over,
understand.
yeah, 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 yeah. But and like in the day and age that we live in, everything that I put out there just stays there, like
Yeah.
even if I delete it, like it might be on something else, because there's been times where like I'll find my work on Pinterest, or I'll find my work somewhere else, or I'm just like, hey, what, I don't even have a Pinterest account, like um so yeah, just for the most part I feel like I've accepted it. um but I think the switch was realizing that like it's okay for me to have those cringe moments, because like I was learning, and I'm still learning,
Yes.
like I'm gonna look back at that and be like, oh wow, like maybe not look at it as like, oh, it's so cringe, but maybe look at it like, oh wow, like this is where your headspace was at, or this is where your um I think that's how I'm looking at it now. I don't have moments anymore where I'm like, oh, that's cringe, at least in my newer work,
Mm-hmm.
because I don't feel like I doubt it as much. I feel like when you're younger, when you're starting something, you have a lot of doubts. I think as you start to grow in your craft, I'm pretty confident in the substance and the work. So when I look back at it now, it's not like, that was bad. That's like, oh, hey, that's where my headspace was at, I
Yeah.
guess.
Yeah.
So it's more like reflective of the time compared to like, oh, that's just bad writing, or oh, I think you get to a point where you're confident in yourself to be like, okay, you know, that's not bad writing. That's just where I was at.
I mean, I have to say, like, because as I said to people before, I don't know you, but what I get as a feeling is a collection of extremely healthy relationships to life,
Mm-hmm.
in a sense of like a good sense of self. And regardless of these kind of fights that we all have to go, and even if you're the best, you will still go through these fights.
Right.
And I'm curious whether that sense of self was something that you really worked hard on, and or it was just coming naturally because you were supported in your family, or by the mentor, or by the people who actually liked your work. So where does that come from, actually?
Sense of self, you said.
Yeah, like a sense of self that is not is not that like anything that you start thinking critically about yourself, or that someone is critical to you doesn't completely decompose your personality, but it just kind of it kind of touches you, but it doesn't destroy you almost, because some people would be so sensitive to criticism or to looking at their own work that they might get completely inhibited and
Mm-hmm.
then just stop writing, or
Right.
some people actually burn their early work. um,
Right.
and I feel like what you do is very healthy, in the sense of like you look back and you have compassion, and that compassion is not it's a sign of actually, for me, I don't know if that might be oversaying it, but it's a sign of maturity as well.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm just curious, how did you build that? Or did you was it conscious process, or it was something that you just have?
I think it was a process. I like how you said that, just like being compassionate to a younger version of yourself, or whatnot. I think it was an understanding of like we're always going to go through certain moments of chaos, but especially like in your younger years, there's just so much going on
Yeah, yeah.
that it's just like, just the fact that you get out of it is almost enough to like clap for,
Yeah, it's true.
So I feel like, yeah, just understanding that like no one, on top of knowing, no one knowing much, uh, at a younger age, you really got to be easier on yourself. So there's no room to be um, critical. And one thing that I've found is just like the ways that you can be critical is not in the intention, but more on the craft end of it. And I
Mm-hmm.
feel like that's something that a lot of like younger people don't understand. It's just like how you're talking about like the criticism, and that's something like when people reach out to me, they're like, hey, can you give me feedback on this? And I can tell like, hey, like they're barely starting to write. I let them know like, if this is coming from your heart, like if this is your truth, if this is your story, there's nothing wrong with it. Where we can improve is how you tell it, how you format it, how you structure it, and of course just like grammar, spelling, and like stuff like that.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's people people blur those lines.
Yes. Yeah.
They look back and like, oh, it's so cringe. It's like, no, that was you. That's you, you know? And what we got better at was how to tell you better, you know? So I think having that realization was what gave me the compassion to be like, all right, you did what you had to do, you know, and you got better technically, and but like the essence of you was always there. So
So I was talking about the fact that I'm reading this book, which talks about the voice inside,
mm-hmm.
um, and or the voices inside. And I was just wondering, because you are so attentive to actually what comes there, um, how much are you able to recognize those voices, and can you differentiate all the different influences, personalities, and everything that constantly speaks inside? And do you play with it? Do you integrate it? What do you do with it?
Yeah, there's definitely like I'd say like my pen voice, um, and I feel like I've recognized that inside my head, and it's very much just myself, but just more like lyrical, more poetic, you know, because like if I'm gonna explain something simple, I'm not gonna try to be super profound about it, you know, when I'm trying to say something very simple. But I think that um, yeah, I can definitely tell when it's just like when my creative gears are turning because of the way I would like normally say something. It doesn't hit my head phrased similarly.
Mm-hmm.
It comes in a way already almost like prepackaged of like, okay, this is going to be poetic, or if I'm, you know, working on a short story, this is going to be, you know, like a think piece, and they come in like different ways, and like you said, they have different personalities, you know. Um,
And how does the critic
and
look like for you?
what
What?
was that? Oh, the critic voice.
Yeah.
It's gotten it's definitely harsh, but it's gotten better, like how we talked about. Um,
I mean,
but it's almost. Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
finish.
I was gonna say it's almost one that I enjoy because it's like it's pushing me to do better. So
Mm-hmm.
it's like I almost view myself as like there's like a little coach, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like in my head saying like, hey, like that was good, but we can do this, or you know, we can change this here. And it's almost like I work with the critique, you know, instead of having it like just completely unarm me. I say, okay, well, you're right. There's like usually it's coming back to it. Like I'll let it sit, come back to it, and be like, okay, like go into critique mode. Let's figure out what's going on here. And instead of being like, oh, that I was wrong. She's like, no, that's good. That's better, you know. Or maybe I do stand confident with it. I was like, no, I had it right the first time, you know. It's learning how to like engage with it and not let it disarm you. Just let it like coach you and like bounce off. You can very much bounce off like ideas with yourself in your head the same way you do with another person when you get into those modes, I guess.
I mean, I'm asking you that for myself because funnily, I realize how harsh my critic is. Like I
Mm-hmm.
personalized my critic voice, and I realize I would not have to want to have a coach like this. And I don't know, almost like, why did I adopt a coach like this? Almost.
uh,
I've never really tried to polish my coach, although I tried to polish myself as a coach to others, which is really funny.
no, yeah, and it could just speak to how you handle direction,
Yeah.
um, because you know some people are like that when they're just like, yo, um, I need to do this, and this, no ifs, ands, or buts. And people be like, all right, cool. For some people, you need to be like, hey, I see that you're doing this and I appreciate, you know, you have to be a little bit more soft and it, without realizing it, maybe that's how you handle things best, you know, subconsciously. So I don't know. But like, I'm like that and I don't mind that. I can be like, hey, no, do this, do this, do this, do this. Okay, we're gonna get it done, you know. It just, I feel like it speaks to people's personalities more than anything.
Yeah, I mean, I'm so grateful that you're willing to go into these places because it's helpful for me, and I hope that that will translate into being helpful for other people. Um,
Right.
and then I want to ask you about the mentor. So you talked about the person who did something that is special for you, and actually, my life is a life of mentorship that brought me there. And
Hmm.
I even like in my PhD defense, I wrote that I stand on the shoulders of giants. So I'm curious uh, to the level of detail you want to talk about that, who that mentor is, and what that person brought into your life. How was that helpful for you?
Yeah. So it's been it's been a at least in my writing life, it's been hard because how I talked about the place that I grew up in didn't really have a lot of people that like wanted to write or had experience with writing. So in terms of like writing, I feel like to this day still haven't found like a true mentor to take me under his wing and be like, okay, we can do this and this. A lot of the stuff that I've learned has just been one through trial and error, and two from just reading um, other poets or other authors that I admire and actually studying like the structure. And in a weird way, like people that I have passed on, I do consider them my mentors because their words are still there.
Mm-hmm.
They're just not there to physically speak them to me.
Mm-hmm.
So a lot of like my mentorship in writing has been from like the people that I've set aside to be like, okay, I want to learn from these people. I'd say like the mentorship that I've had is more like character development and like just like my dad and a couple of my teachers that I had growing up. They really just like instilled a lot of tools that like helped me become the person I am today. And I feel like because the person I am, you know, I was able to succeed like in the writing route. So yeah, I really haven't had a mentor in the writing field, but in terms of just like life, which I feel is just like equally important to a craft.
Absolutely, yes. Yeah.
Um, mm, um, I've had some really good people that have instilled some things that like I can stand on in the middle of anything. So
And can you talk to those things that they brought to you? Can you kind of, are those moments clear moments where you had the realizations, or sometimes there are subtle shifts, but can you talk to that?
yeah, so my dad, he I just think his overall personality and actions are what like have made me just be like, whoa, like I want to be this person. Specifically, it's just like one thing that he's really big on. He's like he doesn't really talk much, but when he does speak, it's like everyone listens. It's like he's about to say something that's like good,
Mm-hmm.
profound, and so that can even translate to my writing. As I noticed, like, hey, like sometimes don't use so much words, just say something that's gonna really hit. And I think for my Instagram, that might be something that you might be able to like tell. It's just like use less but say more.
Mm-hmm.
On top of that is I think like attributes that he's instilled in me is like work ethic. I've never ever heard him complain about getting up and going to work ever. And I think there's something beautiful inside of that. It's like teaching me to like, life's gonna throw you stuff. Don't complain. Just get up and do what you got to do. And then I think that's the last thing that he's really instilled in me. It's just like to be loving, um, because at the end of the day, that's really why I do all this stuff. To love on people and give them what I feel I have to offer. Which is my heart. So yeah, my dad by far has been the person that's just like mentored me through those things. Just in the way that he moves and the small like heart to hearts that we've had has taught me so much. So
That is really beautiful. I mean,
thank you.
it's just I feel like giving the heart to someone, and especially to a lot of people, is kind of the most brave thing one can do. And actually having that as an example for me is just beautiful to see. Because sometimes we close off out of those fears and everything. that life throws at us. And I actually, what I admire about people is that when life throws all of that shit at you, but you still have the openness to give your heart, it's really difficult. It's really
Yeah.
difficult, and it's a lot of work. So I'm actually like, I want to acknowledge it here. That is a beautiful thing. So now what I would like to shift a little bit is to talk about you as a successful author. And are we back?
Can you hear me still?
Now I can hear
Yeah,
you.
I can hear you.
It was frozen for a moment.
Okay, cool.
So what
Sorry
I
about
want
that.
to, no worries. I think it's, we will cut it off. So what I want to shift to is talking about you as a successful person and as a successful author, although maybe the society still doesn't realize that. I saw it, for example. And I want to talk about success, and to start with, when is the first time you heard the word success or the concept itself? When you were the first time conscious of this? And then the second part of the question is, when was it that you first time felt successful? That you kind of won, like, over yourself, or won something?
I think the first time I had the idea of success was probably like in high school, I think.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and I feel like when when your teachers, your counselors, they feel like, okay, well, this kid has like a good chance of doing something with his life. They really try to pay attention to you and like give you the right skills or the right tools to accomplish those things. So I feel like, yeah, probably like high school, whether it's like my junior year of high school, I feel like as you start to like get into that next stage of like, okay, life's gonna happen, things are gonna get real, that's when it first kind of hit me. Because prior to that, I was just right, we're all just coasting until we have to realize that hey, you're gonna have to get some work done and do some things. Um, so that was the first time I realized like, okay, there's this thing, there's this thing, success, that every person has to take upon themselves to figure out. And the first time I think I felt it was probably, it's going to be super like small and I don't know, it's not very cool, let's just throw that out there, but I remember like the very first time I saw a piece of my work on the internet go like viral. It was a really like accomplished feeling because I felt seen. I felt finally, numbers shouldn't have to do with it, like shouldn't have to play into it, but I'm human, and the fact that so many people were resonating with the work, it made me feel like successful. I was like, okay, I set out to be seen, so that with intention, so that way whatever the piece was trying to do, and it did its purpose. It was seen by all these people. So I feel like that's the first time I felt like success, if you will.
And I want to actually ask you along those lines. It's because you are a creator, and sometimes you create something with a certain intention, but then what people perceive can be completely different. So were you at times surprised by the feedback or by the perception of your audience?
Um, I don't think I'm ever surprised too much because it's never super left field. It's never like I put something out and someone's like, "Oh wow, it's beautiful because of this," and I'm just like, "Well, where'd you get that from?" Because I try to be super. If I write something and that happens, then I failed as a writer because I didn't say what I was trying to say correctly. Um, but I never really mind or really pay attention too much to those things, because when I throw it out there, I say what I wanted to say, and then from there, it's completely
It
up
has a life
to,
on its own.
yeah, exactly. It's up for anyone's interpretation, and it's and I know it's going to hit everyone a certain type of way.
Mm-hmm.
I do like to know though what it is about it that did hit you, but I don't like expect people to be like, oh, this is what you're supposed to be feeling, or like I never take it to that extent. But yeah.
Yeah. And then when do you feel like you have won over yourself? So not that the success is externalized, but that you somehow had a battle inside and you felt like I successfully managed and navigated this.
Successfully managed, what was that again?
So when did you feel like the success was internal? So not that, not that anyone can see that success, so it's not
Mm,
measurable,
right.
but you were like, oh, I have done this and I really feel successful, but no one can actually relate to it because it happens inside.
Oof, that's
If
a
it
good
ever
question.
happened,
No, yeah,
yeah.
that's a good question. um I'd say probably like physically was when I put out my first book, because like it wasn't like this crazy #1 bestseller that you see, like that's something that's measurable. People are like, oh yeah, of course, there's a shiny sticker on there, and
Mm-hmm.
he's doing book tours and stuff. But just the sense that like I made something with my own hands, and it's here, like these are my thoughts, these are my emotions, and they're in the hands of someone else in a physical way. I think there's something beautiful about doing work with your hands, and making something physical. Like it's just it's beautiful. But anyways, that was probably like the first time I was like, okay, like I'm inside. I feel good about that. And then I think like the second time was probably just not in a physical sense, but just like getting a sense of um, love and appreciation, like from my family. I think they were just like, hey, like we see what you're doing, and it was really like small circle. Like we see what you're doing, and we're proud of you. And I felt like that gave me a sense of success. It's like, okay, like I think we all want to make someone proud. Whether
Yes.
it's ourselves, but or I feel like it's always multiple people. We should always aim for ourselves for sure, but regardless, there's always going to be someone in our mind's eye that we want approval from, or for whatever reason. And I feel like when they told me that, I felt good about it. So
The funny thing is, like, even sometimes when we think we're making ourselves proud, it's all those voices of other people that are integrated in us that we are making proud. So sometimes it's the questions like whether we are making the true us, whatever that is, the true self proud, or it's just that voice which we integrate.
right,
So I guess it's always there's distinction that we sometimes think we are making it for ourselves, but then it's actually just for the voice. So yeah,
right, yeah,
yeah.
yeah,
There's no question
yeah.
there. I'm sorry, but it was just
No, but like just to go off that, like it's. I think about this a lot, because I'm just like, a lot of people, they feel some type of way about that. They're like, oh well, you shouldn't aim to please anyone but yourself, or. And I think in a sense, like, yes, but also I feel like if people have touched you in a way that you feel you need to give back in whatever sense it might be, in a moment that's just like, hey, I did this, and it was for you, or it was, like whatever, just to have like that mutual love and appreciation. I feel like it's okay to want to do something for someone else, like why not? It's the gesture. It's a loving gesture. It's a giving gesture. It's saying like, hey, this moment could have been just for me, but I want you to be a part of it too. I want you to share. I want you to be inclusive in my life, because it's easy to be walled off and just do me, but to open up and be like, hey, I want you to be a part of this. Like, I think that's where like the vulnerability comes in, and that's what becomes harder than just being like, oh, I did this all for myself.
yeah.
So yeah.
I'm curious also what you think about this. I mean, now I'm just bouncing ideas. It's not really a question. It's also like we constantly talk about the self, but we almost forget always how much that self is relational.
Hmm.
and how much that self is actually built on these interactions. So how aware are you of that, and how much value? I mean, I think I know the answer, but I'm just curious that you verbalize it. Like, how did that play in your life?
Just like understanding that like that those things are important, or
Yes, yeah, yeah.
oof. I think until the day I die, it'll come in seasons. I
Mm-hmm.
think. Oh, can you hear me? Can you hear
Yeah,
me
now
still?
I can, yes, yes.
Okay. Yeah. Until the day I die, I think it'll always come in seasons. And I think because life is a constant, life is constantly just like reaping and sowing, you know? And I feel like whenever you're planting, it has to be selfish and you have to be about yourself because that's when you're getting the work done, you know?
Mm-hmm.
And then when it's time to harvest, then you can do with that as you will, whether it's keep it off yourself again or like give it all, half of it, whatever it may be, you know? Um, but yeah, it's there's no right or wrong. There's just different seasons for it. And there's this. I don't know if you know who Gary V is.
No.
Um, he's just like a business owner, but he believes that you can be like 100% selfish and 100% selfless because when you're selfish with your time and your resources with the intention of being selfless, it works out.
Yes.
So that's kind of how I feel about that. It's just like I know I need the relationships and I know I need those people, but sometimes I need to distance myself and work on me and do this so that way I can get back to them eventually. So,
Yeah, for me that's a very tricky process. So I mean actually just you verbalizing it helps me to kind of give myself permission to do it almost. Because
hmm
a lot of people don't really give the permission to themselves to be like, because it feels so selfish, but at the end of the
hmm
day, exactly as you described it, it's selfless in its selfishness.
right. Which is a weird thing to think about, but it works, you know.
It does.
And one thing that has helped me, at least like in my quote unquote selfish seasons, is like definitely take small moments to reach out to the people that you're doing it for, because like I've had this thought run through my head. Ooh, excuse me. There's been times where like I'm just like working because I want to be able to, you know, give back to my family in ways that you know that I want to, but like in those moments of working, sometimes I forget to check in or I forget to, you know, different things like that. And it's just like you do all this work, but what if one day they're not there, you know, then where does all that work go to, you know, if those were your intentions. So I'd say like if you're one of those people that's like in your working season, definitely take the time just to like call or like, you know, for whoever it is that you're working for or whatever, if that's your personality type, to be like, hey, yeah, I'm in my working season, but I just want to let you know that I love you, or whatever, you know, checking in. So that way, if when you get to the giving season, there's no one to give it to, you don't feel completely shattered in that moment,
Yeah.
because that's a reality for a lot of people. I feel like it's, you know, a lot of people spend so much time working and which is good, but like if you're working for someone, but then it overcomes you and you don't even have any enough time for them, you know, is it really for those people at the end of the day? And, you know, so yeah, it's definitely like check in. I don't know. I know we got off, but like that's kind of where my mind was going with that.
Yeah. I actually like all these off paths because for me that's really where we can find information for ourselves. And
Right.
I feel like I don't think a structure necessarily always brings the truest picture, because then it also kind of fits your personality into something that I want it to be rather than who
Right.
you really are. So always feel free to do that. Um, and then one thing is, what do you think was a belief that you have or you have had that you think was an impediment to achieve your own version of success?
A belief. I think just like understanding that like, yeah, you're gonna have family that's gonna help you, but understanding at the very end of the day, whatever's in your camp is gonna come from your hands. Um, that's pushed me to get to where I want to go. Um, because yeah, there's loving people out there. Yes, there's plenty of people that want to help you, but you know, they have their own problems, they have their own life, and it's just understanding that, like, from day one, like, you want to eat, you got to do the work. So I think just the belief and understanding that hard work will get me to where I want to get has been like the foundation of getting to where I want to go. So.
And actually, now this is, I think, a good time to ask this question. So you are a creative and you want to live from your creative work. So can you talk to that, the hard work you're doing and the business side of your creative work, and how do you make that work in your life
Mhm.
and work for your life?
Yeah. So it's definitely if if you're pursuing like a creative route, it's definitely difficult because you wear many hats. You know, you're the artist, but you're also the business. You know, like you have to learn how to juggle all of these things. And there's so much behind it. Whether it's just like when you're not creating, you're reaching out to, magazines, journals, publishing houses, people that want other creatives that want to collaborate. Um, the biggest thing is the biggest thing is probably just like being seen. You know, um, there's a fight for attention in the world, and I feel like half the work is is trying to be heard. You know, whether that's like reaching out to other people and or a lot of stuff's done. A lot of stuff's done on social media just because at the end of the day, it is a tool to connect people, not just, hey, look, I'm eating this, or whatever.
Yeah,
Um, so besides like the creative process, a lot of it's just like the the business side of it would just be making connections with people, because the more connections you have, the more eyes you have on your work and stuff like that, and yeah, I'd say that's the more tedious end of things, just trying to find people to look at your stuff and get people to read it, and submitting and stuff like that. So.
and since I don't know at all how does that look like, how would you describe it to me, in the sense of, when you say submitting, to whom do you submit, how much of that you do a day,
Mhm.
so how much of your kind of work life, let's say, does that
Right.
take, and how does that look like?
So this answer is very particular just to me, because of the route that I want to take. Because I'd say like the route that I want to take is more entertainment, um, compared to like I'm not setting out to write like the next great American novel. And that would be amazing. I just don't think it's in my wheelhouse right now. And so like entertainment for me is the main goal. And so with that, it comes, there's a little bit more glamour behind it. There's a little bit more um, different hoops that you have to jump through. So like for me, like I said, it's just like being on Instagram, being on Twitter, making these connections. Sometimes not even about the writing, just asking people about how the day is, stuff like that. And I consider that work because it's taking time out of my day.
Of course.
It's yeah, it's taking time out of my day doing things that have to be done in order to get my work seen, and stuff like that. Just because like even building like my social profiles, a lot of that's organically built. A lot of it is I've reached out to every single one of these people and talked to them, whether it was just a back and forth, or we've talked for days, or now we're pen pals, or we're friends, or whatever. I think it's just like building up this building up myself into this public figure, which goes into that vein of entertainment. So my direction looks different than someone that's like, maybe they're trying to do, you know, write a book about politics or something like that. That would be something different, because then they would go like the agent route, and finding people to fund their research and stuff like that, because a lot of stuff I do is not really research. It's more, the poetry is just more emotion and
Expression.
kind of, yeah, an expression. So the route's a little bit different. Like I said, a lot of the stuff that I'm doing is just going to be like, all right, well, he made enough connections and finally he was seen with that stuff, compared to people that have agendas that want to help push information and research and stuff like that. So a lot of my back end work is just making connections with people.
And I'm also curious about the publishing of the book and that process. Um, how did that come to be? From now you realize you actually have the material for a book,
Mm-hmm.
to collecting it together, to making the visuals, to deciding how you're going to publish it, to printing it, and to actually having it
Mm-hmm.
out there.
So both my books have been self-published, and I've done that via Kindle Direct Publishing, which is the route that a lot of people take. It's the simplest, the most cost-efficient. It doesn't give back to the writer as much as different routes could be, but it's also less tedious for the writer to have to worry about different stuff, whether it's like shipping or stuff like that. Um,
So when you
but
say it
yeah, so
doesn't
like
give
once I
as
had the project,
much, when you say it doesn't give as much, like how much in percentage do you get from a sale, for example?
right, it's like a 60-40 split, I believe.
Mm-hmm.
40% going to the writer. But just because like Amazon's in charge of having the materials, putting it together, printing it, shipping it, all that stuff that goes into it. So
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
they really take care of everything for you. And to do that, it's not hard, as long as you, like, once your book's written and it's gone through its edits and it has its, its cover and stuff like that. Um, it's really just choosing the file, putting it into the KDP website, making sure that the dimensions fit, nothing's bleeding off the page, and once it's approved, then it gets put up and you can start promoting. And that's when you start wearing the other hat of, not only are you the writer, the businessman, but you're also the marketer and stuff like that. So yeah, that's kind of the process of that, of self-publishing. So
And I'm curious, do you see yourself at some point actually hiring people doing some of these things for you, or do you not think about it yet?
um I think with the project that I'm working on right now, I do, once it's like finished, I want to be able to pass it off to someone to kind of just like let them deal maybe with more with, like, with the images or the feel of it, almost, because I feel like my skill set might not be as high as theirs, and I feel like I want to be able to impact the most. So like where I'm confident and comfortable in, I will make sure it's solid, but have someone else come in and be like, hey, we can package it to make it look this way, and it'll be received better that way. And if that's the sense, then by all means I'll let them do their job, because I'm not someone that's going to be like, oh no, it has to look like this, because sometimes I might not know what's the best for it.
Mm-hmm.
There's definitely people that's their job, that's what they do, and I'm willing to like give up creative creative rights for them to be like, all right, you do what you need to do, to make sure that it's impactful the most. So I want to get to that spot where I have a team behind me, just kind of like, whether it's like marketing, I feel like that'd be like the biggest one. Someone that just like knows how to really capture an audience, because I have no doubt in the substance of the work. The biggest thing is always just finding the right moments, the right way to engage with whatever trends going on online right now, or stuff like that. And if someone's more suited to do that, by all means, I'd be like, hey, you do that. I'll stick to the writing and not have to worry about that type of stuff. But yeah.
And I'm also curious, like you thought that you said that you had many people that are pen pals, or they become maybe co-creators. I'm curious, what was your most fun co-creating project that you had so far, or is there something you're working on that might be the the thing that someone really fueled you in a way that you didn't really expect?
I'd say the coolest, like, I'll answer both. The pen pal wise, there's I have a friend named Yuna, and she's from the Philippines.
Mm-hmm.
And when I released my first book, she had reached out to me over social media, and I don't think it was like accessible to her region, but she really, really, really wanted a copy, and I didn't even really like think twice about it. I was like, I'll just like send you a copy, you know, like here you go, you know, and it was like so impactful to her, and we have a cool relationship now, and like she started calling me like big brother, and it was a nice like little badge for me to wear, you know, to know that like I impacted someone out of the States, like that maybe didn't have access um, to purchasing my work. So that's cool. That's a cool relationship. And in terms of like co-creating projects, working with people that know how to handle visuals is something that I've been working on recently. Um, because I've noticed that things that really that people like from me is when I like narrate my poems, they kind of like just like to listen to my voice, and so I have put together some pieces that I've recorded, and then I'm just like passing it on to people to like create videos that kind of like really just package it all together, you know. So those are probably like the most exciting um, collaborations for me, when I can, because it's a whole experience. Not only are you getting the poetry, you know, you're listening to it, you're having visual. Like when I can like collaborate with someone that way, it's the best. It's my favorite thing to do.
I mean, for me, I fully kind of understand what you talk, because when I tried to, I was creating a concert for Serbian traditional dancing, and just this beauty of, you have an idea, and all these small pieces with their kind of skill set come together to really make it a fruition, and like
Mm-hmm.
this whole thing, it just feels really rich somehow
Mm-hmm.
to
Yeah.
see the end product, although you haven't contributed like fully by yourself, but it's just
Mm-hmm.
beautiful to see that come together.
Yeah, I've always thought like a true, you know, like a true experience really engages you with, you know, like the more senses activated, the more, you know, engaged you are, of course.
Yes.
So if someone's a master in their craft when it comes to visuals, and we compare that to, you know, go nicely with something that I've written and spoken, it's just like it's the best. You have like a fully functioning body, you know, the eyes,
Yeah.
the mouth, and the ears and stuff. So I really do enjoy that.
Yeah, I'm actually looking forward to see that.
I have a couple like small ones on my Instagram that I put up of me like narrating stuff. I don't know if you've checked it out. Just so you can get like a feel of like of the rhythm of the spoken word. But the visuals I put together, so they're not as good as what they could be. But so I do have some stuff up there. But yeah.
Yeah. And actually, the next question for me would be, how do you, what do you think is the secret to your success? So, what is the skill or the trait you have that you think differentiates you from other successful people?
Um, I think it's just like a combination of a natural gift and also a drive to get better. Um, because in any field, you have people that are just naturally gifted. You also have people that wanted to do something, but um, they gained their success by just being diligent at it. I feel like if you're one of the people that understands that this is what you're meant to do, and on top of that, you work at it, it's really hard to compete with those type of people. You know, you see it with like athletes. You know, some people are just a little bit more naturally gifted in certain things, and when they start to work on it more, it's just like, well, I can't compete with that. You know, so like I feel like when you have an understanding of what your gift is, and on top of that, you work at it and don't just let it be something that, oh, I'm just naturally good at this. You know, it sets you apart from both those camps, the people that are gifted and the people that are working hard. It's just like you're a combination of both those people, you know. And then on top of that, just fight the personal life experiences I've been through, and the way that I'm able to structure them with language is something that's powerful and something that I believe in. So I feel like it stands out for itself. So yeah.
Yeah. And also I'm wondering, because we always say work hard, but for example, sometimes I create a lot of things that feel extremely effortless just
Mm-hmm.
because they're fun for me doing it. So I'm just curious, um, what are the part of the work that you're doing that sometimes actually feel effortless for you?
Outside of writing like poetry, like music, something that I really love. And so, and especially like hip hop. So like sometimes like I'll freestyle and that comes effortlessly, but it's still exercising like my pen, you know?
Mm-hmm.
Ooh, excuse me. Sorry, but in terms of like writing something that doesn't feel like work, oddly enough, that is work is the editing process because it feels like a puzzle to me, and I love working out puzzles. So like just like looking at the piece and being okay, well like this is gonna go here and this is gonna go there. Like it that's when I feel the passion the most. When I'm just like I'm creating something and this is gonna plug in here and this is gonna go there and then once it's finally set, then I'm just like okay, I feel good about that, you know. Um, those are like the effortless moments, and those are the things that don't feel like work, but it's work, you know, it's getting things done.
Yeah, yeah. And then I'm curious, what do you think a successful day looks like for you, and how many versions of it you have? Because you said you know a distinction between a good day and a bad day. So
Mm-hmm.
how does that look like for you?
I think a successful day for me is just feeling content with not the the quantity of work, but the quality of work.
Mm-hmm.
Because there's sometimes I'm like, okay, I wrote this much, but I was just like, I didn't really feel like there was enough substance there. Sometimes I can go throughout the day and maybe just write one small piece, but knowing that it's going to impact people 10 times harder than maybe like 3 pieces of stuff I don't really feel about as much, it gives me enough satisfaction to be like, okay, I was productive today. But at least have to try it to do something. But in terms of like life in general, a good successful day for me would practicing gratitude, getting out some writing, doing some reading, some form of exercise, um, and probably just like reaching out to one of my loved ones. I think it just keeps me grounded and keeps me connected. So yeah, that's probably like a successful day for me.
Yeah. And I'm curious also, what what truth about reality you were maybe unwilling to accept for the longest of time, and maybe you still feel like you're unwilling to accept, but you know if you don't, you can't go further.
Um, Probably that things take time. Like all good things take time. Because I remember just like being so eager to get out the gate and start writing, and oh yeah, this first project's like so much numbers, and you know, blah blah blah. Like when you're passionate about something, you obviously want to see the best version of it.
Mm-hmm.
I think the understanding that everything's a process and that everything will come when it's your time. Um, I think that reality has helped me like, okay, you know, not get discouraged or just live a healthy life, you know, just understand that things will come as they come.
I'm
Because at
still
first,
struggling with that, by the way.
yeah, it's hard. It's hard.
It's really hard.
It is. You have, I think the best thing that's helping with that is like celebrating the small victories, right? Because like in our mind's eye, we have this idea of like where we want to be and stuff like that, and oftentimes the little milestones don't feel like enough. But I feel like if you really pay attention to them and really celebrate them, you know, you're falling in love with the journey, and you know, makes the destination all worth it and whatnot. But yeah, I think that reality was just realizing like, hey, you're doing what you love to do. You'll get there eventually. You just gotta just let the process unfold um, naturally, and fall in love with that process. So yeah.
Yeah, that is beautiful. And I use that word often, but I think
It's,
life is beautiful. So,
no, it still holds weight. It still holds weight. Don't get me wrong.
yeah. Um, And then, what do you think was the most difficult change inside or outside that you had to make in order to kind of achieve the version of success you're yeah, kind of hoping for? So what do you think is like inside your personality that actually is like you really need to work on?
Hmm. I think, at least for me, it was just like understanding that like, hey, yeah, I'm a creative, but also I need to have some drive, some structure to get things accomplished. I think once I became a little more focused and understanding like this is what I want to do with my life, it became okay. Well, this isn't just frolicking through the meadows and writing poetry. It's like okay, there's a business into it, and I gotta understand it, and and I gotta learn like how to operate in this game. I if you want to play the game, you got to know the rules. So it's just like the change was just like, okay, I need to learn the rules. I need to understand what's going on behind the scenes, so that way it can feel like I'm just running through the meadows writing poetry, because everything has a behind the scenes. Everything that we look at had a process that got them to where they're at right now, and oftentimes that process isn't shown. It's just like, oh, here's this person and they're amazing. It's like, okay, well, they went through so much to get to what we view as amazing. So understanding that there's a process there and I have to play a part of that process, I think is what changed inside me to get myself into gear kind of, and get moving with like putting out work and stuff like that.
Yeah. I mean, also one of the reasons I'm kind of doing this podcast is also I feel like when we get successful, we start to romanticize the journey. So we almost sometimes omit all those struggles because then the story becomes just more appealing.
Yeah,
But I think the things you're sharing are actually the genuine part of the whole process, because everyone who has done something of value had to go through all these steps. They
for
just
sure.
kind of forget them along the way.
Yeah.
Because
Hmm.
I feel it like it's almost like, when women give labor and then they forget the pain before the next child, because it's like,
Because the moment was glorious. Like, yeah, let's do
exactly,
this.
exactly. But then like the pain still, you still had to go through that pain somehow.
Right. That
Um,
was that was a good analogy. I like that.
I mean, sorry, I have a lot of commentaries, but I also feel like this is a conversation. So,
No, yeah, yeah. No, I loved that. That was good.
and actually, what do you think were the good advices, but then also what do you think were bad advices that you had to sieve away um, to reach to the place you are now, that you have been given by other people?
Mm, I feel like maybe not so much advice that I've been given, but maybe like critique.
Mm-hmm.
I guess it's yeah. So like it hasn't came like in my personal life, but most like in the writing. Um, and it comes in forms of like, oh well, you could you could say it like this or you could say it like that, and I think distinguishing like when it's beneficial to take those advices for the technical aspect of it compared to the content behind it, I guess, um, has been my journey and my experience. But I'm sorry, what was the original question? I want to get a little bit more
No, I
on
think
top of
actually
what you were saying.
it's a good point, because I said what are the bad advice that you got along the
Yeah,
way.
I couldn't really think of anything.
But I understand what you mean, because I, even when I present my data, we
Mhm,
always get input, but sometimes you don't want to change your voice fully,
mhm,
because it still has to be your own expression.
mhm.
So yeah, I understand what you could perceive as a bad advice is actually someone just imposing
Right.
themselves too much on you,
Mhm.
as opposite to just giving you the space to just almost like giving you an offering rather than like pushing something on you. So yeah,
Right. Yeah. Sorry, my mind went there. I really couldn't think of any like bad advice I've been given. For the most part, I feel like I've set myself around people that genuinely want to see me grow, and so I don't feel like they've ever had like malintention to be like of good character or not my circle of people. So I've never really been in a situation where I feel like I received bad advice, I guess. So that's why I felt like I couldn't really speak to that.
Yeah. And then one of the last kind of questions about the success part of the story. What do you think are the, maybe it can be people's or ideas that inspired you or changed you at different stages of your life and kind of guided you to this point that you are in now?
To people's ideas that guided me to success.
Yeah, that inspired you to that.
People, I'd say mostly just like my family, like we talked about, for reasons that just I want them to be able to benefit off my own success. And ideas, I'd say just ideas have been just like the things that push me. It's just the idea that everyone deserves to hear like a good message, you know, a message of like hope or healing. And it's the biggest reason why like I write, because I feel like the first steps to healing come from understanding that someone's lived a similar death, you know? Because sometimes, because I feel like there's a difference between like saving someone and like helping them through healing. Because like I could pull someone out of the mud, but that doesn't really do anything. Like that doesn't really help them in that process. If I stand beside them and say like, hey, like these were my footsteps. I understand what you're going through. I feel like that's the first for a lot of people. Um, that's the first steps for them to being like, okay, like I can do this too. So just that idea alone has pushed me, because I feel like there's so much, how you were talking about like the story of us collectively, I feel like is so depressing. Like there's a lot of hurt in the world. So I feel like the things that have pushed me the most is just like understanding that I have had these pains that people have shared, that they need to know that they're going to be okay too. And that's probably the biggest, if not the main drive for the things that push me to success. Just like at the end of the day, I want people to know that they're going to be okay, you know. And as someone that has the gift of writing, I feel like it's my responsibility. um, Language is a powerful thing, you know. It's a weapon. People use it in crazy, insane ways, you know, to persuade. To, you know, we were just talking earlier about religion and how those stories literally shape us into having these weird fears, you know, that all comes from language, from storytelling. So if I can use that to get someone to understand that they're going to be okay, for me, I feel like is why I'm here, and what pushes me towards success. So yeah.
And I like that genuine love you have towards the world. And it really transpires through, well, you're writing obviously, but just it's just so genuine that whatever you say kind of comes from that source. And it's like
Mm-hmm.
very nice to see on the outside. And now I will just go to the small, like, rapid fire questions to kind of
Okay.
wrap up the whole story. So one thing is that, what do you think is an absurd thing about you that not many people know about?
Did you say absurd?
Absurd, yeah. That some kind of idiosyncrasy of Z,
Right, right. um, hmm.
and you're willing to share with the world.
Something. Okay. So every year my birthday since I was like 13, I've wished for the same thing. That's something small. That's about me that like I don't know why it's super weird, and I'll share it with you. It's not like maybe back then I believed in it, you know, like, oh, I can't tell, but every year on my birthday I wish that when Christmas comes there'll be snow on Christmas, because my birthday's in November, and so like December comes, and since I was like 13, every year that was my wish. I think that's something small about me that is kind of wacky, but it's part of me. Yeah.
I like that.
Which one
I've got very
doesn't
interesting
think of?
answers to this question, and your one really goes into the interesting category. Um, and then, what kind of compliments, if any, do you like to receive?
Mm, if any. It's funny that you mentioned this because I was just talking about how the word beautiful it's really hard to hold. Um, for a lot of people, like compliments. There's I feel like, well, I don't know. If I feel like if you're damaged, they're hard to hold. But for the longest time, I didn't like receiving compliments. And sometimes I still kind of just brush them off. Um, but hearing things of like, this really helped me, or this really saved me from a dark place, are things that I like hearing because I feel like I'm accomplishing my goal as a writer. So I wouldn't necessarily say like compliments about me. I'm not too like worried about myself. Excuse me. But when it comes like to the craft and people are like, hey, I like it not because it's like good. I like it because it helped me. I feel like that's when it brings me satisfaction.
And one other question is, what do you think has become more and what less important to you with your maturing and with you growing older?
Hmm. That's a good question. I think something that's more important to me is, I'm gonna sound like a complete cheeser here, but just finding someone that I can like share life with has been important to me. Um, because we have these intimate moments all the time, day after day that you want to share with someone. And it's nice to have those moments by yourself for sure, but I believe that life is meant to be shared. So I think something that's more important to me is just like finding someone that accepts me, understands me, can share life with me, no matter what. And things that become less important is probably how I come across to people, um, not in some kind of rude way, like, oh, I don't really care. It's just like you're either gonna accept who I am or not. And I think before I kind of wanted everyone's like acceptance of me and like, oh, I need to be this type of way. But now it's just kind of like, oh, if you like me, you do. If you don't, whatever. It doesn't matter to me. So I feel like those two things have gotten more and less for me.
Yeah, I mean, the funny thing about sharing is that I always had this internal thing that almost as if the moment doesn't exist if I haven't shared it with someone.
Mm, yeah.
Almost as if like I see it, I perceive it, and you hold the beauty of the moment.
Mm,
But if you haven't shared it with someone, as if like the beauty is somehow dissipated.
yeah. It's kind of like the boy who cried wolf. It's like you see
Exactly.
this beautiful sunset, and then you're just like, ah, and then it's like, yeah, 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 whatever. Like no one was there.
Yeah,
I get that.
exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
No, that's funny. I feel that too.
And then the last thing would be, is there like a burning question you would ask yourself, and you have always wanted to be asked, but somehow no one really has seen that part of your personality, or no one has like had this perception to recognize it, and you always wanted to voice something to the world? I mean, you do a lot of voicing to the world through your
Right, right.
writing, I guess, but the
Maybe it's something that goes like unseen, I guess. I think it's how much I pay attention to detail when I care for someone. I feel like it's always something that I'm just like, does no one see this, or like what's, and not that I say that because it needs to be admired or praised. It's just like, I think when your natural personality is a sense of giving, if you're throwing things out and it's not being received, then it feels like, well, what am I doing this for? And that goes down to the core of your existence. You know, that's who your personality type is. If you're a giver, it's just like, okay, well, you're my person.
You
Hello,
hear me now?
sorry,
Okay. So now we're
I
here.
can hear.
Cool.
Yeah,
Cool. So I would,
I don't know if you were talking to me, but in the house.
so now I
Can
think
you hear
I
me?
hear you fluently. Yeah, it should be fine. So I actually really want
Okay,
to
cool.
hear this answer because, well, I will share at the end with you, but so the question you want to ask yourself is basically coming to the point of uh, how much you like to give and how much sometimes people don't notice when you care about them, how much intention there is into what you give and create for them.
Right.
So I would like you to retell a little bit the story because we got this interruption. Um, so why is that so important to you, and how would you want it to be perceived?
It's important to me because I feel like it like it ties with like my love language and a lot of things. Like I said, a lot of the stuff that I like, the way I live my life is throughout like love. And so like when it in any type of relationship, you know, whether it's like friendship or just meeting on the street, or it's like a personal intimate one. So like the reason I would ask that is just because since it's literally the DNA of who I am, when you deny that, it almost like my brain goes into a fritz, you know, and just like, what's going on, you know, like, well, because it almost dismisses me as a person entirely because that's how I operate. This is who I am. And so like if you're the personality type, like I said, where you're the giver and who you have your eyes set on to receive that isn't holding it with the proper detail that you're giving and paying attention to, it's almost just like dismissing you entirely, you know.
Yeah.
So, and like I said, I've had situations where that's been the case, and so I I question it. I was like, well, do you not see? You know, like, do you not see what's going on here? And like I said, not to be praised, but just to understand that I'm operating in a lot of passion and love. So
I like that you lose all the keywords that I kind of tend to use describing myself. So that's why I reacted so intensely because I just had, as I told you, my birthday week, and
right.
I I normally the way I think of people and the way I kind of try to operate is that I really try to talk to them a lot to really get to know the core of their being, to know like the small idiosyncrasies that they are specific to them.
Mm-hmm.
Then, you know, you try to craft something that's very intentional and very, as you said, detail oriented. And I had exactly the same experiences where people just sometimes almost as if like you feel they need it, but
Mm-hmm.
is it really true then they that that's what they needed when they don't have a way of appreciating it? So like
Mm-hmm.
you really feel rejected, almost like completely unseen. And then like one other thing that happens to me is like because you like to do that for other people, you also would love that someone has see does those small things for yourself, for you.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And for me, because now I'm in that headspace where because of my birthday many things like this happened after 30 years of my existence, like after 30 years of like craving for things like this.
Like, finally.
Yeah, exactly. And finally it's like this whole year, because I moved to London a year and a half ago, and I never expected that like such abrupt changes will happen in my life.
Mm-hmm.
And suddenly like really really like almost like really core changes in my being have happened. And suddenly I'm surrounded by people who actually start to really see me and feed me in the way I do, and it is really the most kind of liberating feeling
Mm-hmm. Yep.
when someone has the same level of perception for small details and for life, at the end for life. I don't know,
Right.
It's like, you know, when you can, there is a book I really like, and one sentence that really describes for me how good of a writer this person is, or how good of a, let's say, an artist someone is. It's like there's a sentence which they say, the boy can hear how the grass is growing.
Mm.
So imagine the level of perception towards life, that you are so connected to every part of life that you have
Right.
that level of sensibility. So
Mm-hmm.
if you have that sensibility and no one else has it, you feel so isolated somehow. So I kind of, when you said
Yep.
this, I really could relate.
I'm glad you could, like, even as you were speaking, like I knew where it was going just because I've felt it, I've been there, I understand. So I'm glad we could be on the same page on that.
Yeah.
I'm like, I think even just the reaction of both of us laughing, and that like just the laughter itself speaks to so much, because it's just like a
Yeah.
sense of relief, you know.
Yes. I mean, I
You
had,
you you you
sorry, I
you
had like
walk around and you're
this
smile.
smile.
Hmm. It's yeah, that laughter, that sense of that release, that relief of just like understanding, like, hey, I'm not crazy, I'm not, like there's someone like me, and like finding your tribe is so nice,
Yeah. Yeah.
but yeah, I get that, I feel that.
I mean, the funny thing for me is that, because, you know, sometimes we feel like we need to find a tribe exactly at the place we are. And
Hmm.
for me, that was maybe the biggest difficulty growing up, because I never felt I had a tribe. And only now I realize that my tribe is the whole world, and how beautiful it is to live in a world where you can actually pick and choose from 7 billion people
Right.
that you can connect to. And I mean, just having this connection, which was like very spontaneous,
Hmm.
it's like extremely interesting to get to a place where you feel seen for the first time by someone who you just met on Instagram like
Right.
6 days
No, I
ago or
was
something.
just thinking the same exact thing.
Yeah. Okay, yeah, here I think it's a good place to wrap it up. But what I would like, and I think would be the best way of doing it, is for you maybe reading something you feel either is something that speaks for the moment of your work, or something that you feel most proud of and you would like to share.
Yeah, I could do that. Looking. Is there a certain mood that you want to stick to? Because I could go anywhere. I could go like keep it light. I could go heavy. Does it matter?
We can do one very deep and something that you would like. Actually, on a selfish note, I would like something that you would think would talk to me, and
Okay.
then one thing that you think would talk to the audience, and one thing that you think is just light.
Okay, hold on one second. I think I have something um, for you. The one I think I have for you is a small one, but um, I think it makes sense. So this one's for you, and it's actually the book that I have out. It's called a box of unsent letters, and this is a piece from it, and it's small, but I feel like it speaks to what we talked about. Um, and it's not the moment wasn't us, but I feel like you'll understand. And it just says, "I'll never forget how you look, singing your favorite song, driving fast, the air against our faces. You give beauty to simplicity, illuminate the seconds otherwise wasted." So I feel like since we talked about detail and we talked about, you know, just really someone that pays attention to these moments, and how much more enriching it is when they do and they receive it. I feel like that one kind of speaks well to you, because at the beginning it talks about, just being observant of how someone is when they're just super engaged into something that they love doing, with even if it's as simple as driving around with the wind and the music, there's a lot of beauty there. And I feel like if you can capture that and understand it and appreciate it, and then do something on top of that that shows appreciation for that beauty that was given to you unintentionally, it's a beautiful thing.
Yeah.
So there's that. For the audience, oof. I think I'll do this one. It's one of my more favorite pieces, still from the book. Keep it small. But yeah, it just says, and this is all from like a love section. I don't want to get like too off rail and start talking about sad things, but it says, when we are together, I have small, brilliant moments. I'm out of my flesh and free to be everywhere at once. And I feel like when you're just like truly connected to someone, you have those moments where you just feel like out of your body, and it comes a thing where you're just like everywhere at once, I think it's just the image of it in your head is kind of what gives this piece substance. At least when I was writing it, I just thought of just like being so connected to someone, and like almost like an explosion, but still somehow intact.
Yeah.
And I think that image is it's nice to look at, it's an image with words. It's nice to look at. Oh yeah, this one. So this is something that I've been just thinking about a lot. I'll read it and then I'll talk about why I've been thinking about it. But it says, the human experience, similar yet unique. It is beautifully painful and beautifully grand. It is made of moments shared and remembered. It is death and comfort in knowing everything that gave it worth will be found and felt again. This is our legacy. And there's a lot there just because it started with me thinking like, I have this natural feeling of just always like, I want to be remembered, like I feel like we all want to leave a part of ourselves behind, whether it's through a child, through pieces of work, through the advancement of civilization itself, like whatever the extremes may be, like there's a desire in all of us to want to leave something behind. And I think the thought of fading away is something that like hovers over a lot of people. People that get uncomfortable with ideas of death, and the idea that like, oh well, once this is done, it's done. Like it can be hard to deal with. It does, like I said, hover around. But I think I found acceptance in knowing that if I live life to the fullest, I'm still a part of those moments because they'll be relived, just not in my body or in my conscious, but through humankind itself. People will fall in love. People will have their first this, their first that, and those moments are so beautiful. I think understanding that those moments won't go away gives me enough peace to understand that even when I'm gone, they'll still be around, because of the moments that made my life worth it. So,
And
yeah.
one other thing that kind of spoke to me is that sentence. I will paraphrase it because I don't remember, but that so similar yet so unique. And this is something that I really find funny because there is so much in us that we want to be special, at least for someone, because we feel that uniqueness and that maybe slight separation from all of the others. But then at the end of the day, somehow when you see that actually the experiences are very similar, we
Right.
sometimes get into this dissonance. But I felt so special, but I'm actually so much the same.
Mm-hmm.
And actually it's a really confusing feeling for being a human, because I feel both.
Right.
We need someone to actually help us to feel special on a small scale, or even on a grand scale if you are a very good writer and your voice is unique. But then we also need to feel the same and connected, because if we feel so special and so different, we will never feel accepted. So
Mm-hmm.
there's almost a paradox in us that we want to contain both, and
Right.
they're like they're, how do you say, like oxymorons almost, like
Mm-hmm.
they are two words that they just can't stand next to each other.
Right.
So I feel like,
It's
sorry.
No, go ahead. Go ahead.
I mean, there is this thing that Esther Perel, when she talks about relationships, is that she says that there are some things that are not problems to solve, but paradoxes to manage.
Mm.
And this one thing in human existence is what I feel is something we need to manage rather than to solve. Is that
Yeah.
how do we feel special and the same at the same time?
And it's definitely hard. Like I feel like there's multiple things that are just going to be like internal battles of it's pulling this way and it's pulling this way, you know, how you were talking about, but you know, and that covers so many different things, but you know, with this thing in particular, it's just like understanding that there are going to be moments, and the reason why they're special is because they're happening to you right there, you know, with whoever they're involved with, you know, those the elements are the people involved, you know, like when I was first thinking about it, I was thinking about like my first kiss, right? It was special to me, but also everyone has their first kiss, you know. It's like we have that shared moment, but the element with it is the connection that I have with the person it
Mm-hmm.
was involved with, you know. So I think just understanding the beauty and the rarity of the elements that are involved, but understanding that we all have that shared for the most part process in life of going through these moments.
Yeah. I mean, I will again say it for the one last time. It is really beautiful. What you're saying. Um, yeah, I think on that note, we could wrap up now. And I really
Okay,
want to, yeah, acknowledge the fact that it's beautiful to see a human being who has so much love to give. And in your
thank you.
case, it's beautiful to see that you found your voice, your gift through which you can give the love back. And I want to thank you for that because it helped me. And I hope in the future we'll have much, much more or many, many more people. Now I don't know the English, but
You're fine. No, those are the intentions, and I hope it does carry that way. And I want to thank you too for having me. I want to point out that I know this is very new to you, but like just you were a superstar in guiding this whole conversation. Like, I'm not gonna lie, I was a little nervous at first and stuff like that, but I felt I warmed up to you and stuff like that. But just the fact that you stayed on topic, and even in times where I didn't know exactly what I was saying, because that happens a lot, you found a way to bring me back and or even make sense of what I was trying to say better. So I think those are qualities in a superstar person, a hoster and a podcaster and stuff like that. So I all praise goes to you for that. So
thanks so much.
and happy belated also. And
Well, happy
yeah, thanks.
belated to you because we were born in the same.
Yeah, for sure. We're both celebrating.
Okay.
So again, thank you. This has been lovely.
You have just heard the story of Isaiah Quinn Rodrigues, a 26-year-old writer based in Washington state. Isaiah's main purpose for writing, besides his natural love for the craft, is to provide the words you don't have for the feelings you do. If you'd like to see snippets of Isaiah's work, he can be reached on Instagram at Zthepoet. Thank you for joining me on this journey, and if you like the stories you hear, please like and subscribe so they can reach more people.